The unraveling of a marriage can stem from many things: a heated argument, unresolved tension, or, as in my case, a revelation that changed everything. It wasn't the fight itself that ended my relationship with Stacy. No, it was what I uncovered in the middle of one of our all-too-familiar squabbles. It began on a seemingly ordinary Saturday morning. Stacy and I once again found ourselves locked in yet another shouting match. Funny enough, I can't even recall what triggered it. Probably something trivial, like dirty dishes left in the sink, unfolded laundry, or some other petty household grievance. That was just how we were. Throughout our time together, we both had an insatiable need to prove we were right, to impose our opinions on each other, as if every little disagreement was a battle that needed to be won. Our fights could get so intense that we would go days without speaking. It didn't matter whether the argument was over which movie to watch or whether someone should rinse their coffee cup. Our tempers flared with the same intensity. At some point, we accepted this as our Italian-style relationship, convincing ourselves that fiery clashes were simply part of the passion. That morning was no different. We yelled, hurled cutting words at each other, digging deep to find the sharpest insults, the ones designed to wound the most. Then, in a moment of exasperation, Stacy screamed, "That's it. I'm done. I'm leaving you forever." Without thinking, I shot back, "Who even needs someone as hysterical as you? Where are you going to find another idiot willing to put up with you?" Not my finest moment. Back then, all I cared about was landing the most painful blow. Normally, she would have snapped back with something just as cruel. But this time, something shifted. Her expression changed. Her anger didn't explode outward like usual. Instead, her eyes burned with a quiet, controlled fury. And then she said it. "You think no one wants me? My boss has been after me for a long time. He actually thinks I'm amazing." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Her words hit me like a truck. A tidal wave of shock, rage, and betrayal crashed over me, leaving me gasping for breath. I needed to confront her, to scream, to demand an explanation. But despite my temper, I had never and would never lay a hand on a woman. Instead, I just wanted to erase that moment from my mind, to pretend it had never happened, sleep through it, run away, anything but sit there drowning in the pain of what I had just heard. 3 days passed. 3 long, bitter days where I tried to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, I had imagined the whole thing, that it was just another one of our fights. Gone too far. But then she came back, and she wasn't alone. 2 movers trailed behind her as she walked into our apartment, her expression unreadable. Without a word, she headed straight for her things, methodically packing up her life. I stood there, frozen, as she loaded her belongings into the waiting car downstairs. And just like that, she was gone. No screaming this time. No last-minute barbs. No desperate attempt to wound each other with words. It was over. For a while, the fights continued, only now, they played out over the phone. And then, eventually, even those stopped. The next 6 months felt like an eternity. I cycled through every emotion imaginable: anger, jealousy, regret. I couldn't shake the dreams where our fight had ended differently, where Stacy had come running back into my arms, confessing she had only said those things to hurt me, that there had never been another man. But every time I woke up, reality hit like a punch to the gut. She had betrayed me, and she was gone, until she wasn't. One evening, out of nowhere, she showed up at my door. No warning, no explanation, just rang the bell like nothing had happened. When I opened the door, she strolled past me, straight to the kitchen and started making coffee. I watched in stunned silence as she moved around like she still belonged there, her presence both familiar and jarring. Then, as if 6 months of chaos and heartbreak had never happened, she took a sip of her coffee, met my gaze, and said, "I want to start over." I felt my breath catch in my throat. A war raged inside me, a tangled mess of emotions I couldn't begin to unravel. Hold on a second, I cut in, unable to hide how much her words, despite everything, still had the power to affect me. The air between us was thick with tension, the weight of unspoken words pressing down like an unbearable force. I could see it in her eyes. Hope, regret, desperation, but none of it mattered. You do realize there's one thing I can never forgive, right? My voice was steady, though my insides churned with everything I wanted to say. Infidelity. Physical infidelity. Stacy lowered her gaze, avoiding my eyes, but I wasn't done. The thought of you being with someone else, of you and him together, it will never leave me. It'll creep into my mind at the worst moments, haunt me every time we're close. And I know myself, I won't be able to move past it. She said nothing. Neither did I. The silence between us was suffocating. Yet, deep down, a small, desperate part of me clung to one last shred of hope. If she had made it all up, if her words had only been meant to wound me in the heat of the moment, maybe, just maybe, I could forgive. Maybe starting over wasn't entirely impossible. And then, as if reading my mind, she confessed. I made it all up. There was no affair. I just wanted to hurt you, to get back at you for saying no one would ever want me. I'm sorry. A single tear welled up in her eye, her face full of what seemed like genuine remorse. It was the perfect setup for a dramatic reconciliation. The kind where we'd fall into each other's arms, forgive everything, and pretend love conquered all. Except I already knew the truth. I had proof. For the past 6 months, Stacy hadn't been living alone. I had spoken to one of her co-workers, someone who knew everything. The reality was far uglier than her carefully constructed lie. She had been living in an apartment, but it wasn't hers. It was paid for by her actual lover, her boss. I laid it all out for her, every detail, every fact. And she didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She didn't even pretend to be shocked. Instead, she did the one thing she had always done best. She ran. One moment she was standing there, trying to weave together a version of the past she thought I'd accept. The next, she was gone, her purse clutched tightly in her hands as she bolted out the door. And that was all I needed to know. Her grand return had nothing to do with love, regret, or second chances. It was desperation, plain and simple. The life she had thrown everything away for had come crumbling down around her. The man she had risked it all for, her boss, had been playing his own game. A narcissist, charming and manipulative, he had lured her in with promises of a new life together, whispered the sweet words she had longed to hear. He swore he would take her with him, painted a future she was too blinded to question. But when the time came, when his paperwork was finally approved, he left. Just like that. Even worse, he had only paid her rent for 1 extra month before walking away, leaving her stranded, used, discarded. And that was when reality hit her. The life she had chosen, the man she had bet everything on, had left her with nothing. And suddenly her imperfect, ordinary husband, the one who had always been there, who had always taken care of her, didn't seem so bad. So she came crawling back, ready to rewrite history, hoping to manipulate her way into another chance. But her little act didn't work. Now, she's the one left picking up the pieces while her lover flies off to a new life without her. And me? I'm finally free. Free from the lies, the betrayals, the constant battles. And for the first time in a long time, I can breathe again.